Good day and welcome to Wheat Pete's Word here on Real Agriculture for Wednesday, January the 31st. On this episode of The Word, opportunities you should not miss. Hey, a great discussion on cover crops. There's been so much out there and I want to try to summarize some of that. Lots of input as well. Finish up with some agronomy answers, some questions coming in that I will address, and keep the questions coming. I'm not begging for questions. Some people say, oh, Peter, you're always begging for questions. I'm not. But dang it all, this system doesn't work without feedback, so please, I love the feedback. Let's go. And on the feedback note, to both Martin and to Clark and many others previously, but, you know, Wheat Pete loves doing the word. There's no question about that. It's just fun, and I love interacting with growers and doing presentations and having discussions, but it always really is nice when someone gives you a little bit of a boost when they send that to you. So both Martin and saying, you know, thanks for doing this, appreciate it, lots of good stuff. And Clark is sending us a note about the Ag Conference, the Ontario Ag Conference, and the impact it had, a couple of the sessions on his dad. And those notes, they really resonate with everybody that's involved here at Real Agriculture with the Ontario Ag Conference, with all the things that Wheat Pete's involved with. So really appreciate. Nature Nut Nick once told me long ago, and he's referenced it several times, that he did a course, and the impact of a little bit of encouragement, positive feedback right at the start to make people feel like they're doing a good job versus the impact of starting off by saying, you just are, you know, crap or whatever. That made a huge impact on Nick at the time, and it holds true with everyone. So really appreciate those positive messages. Thanks so much. Keep the messages coming. Hey, on a different note, but a bit of a sad note, Jack Riddle, a former agricultural minister with the Ontario government, passed away last week. A real sad day from that standpoint. He was an excellent agriculture minister. He loved agriculture, and political stripes aside, he really did try to move the bar forward in terms of so many things around soil health and the environment and crop production and animal agriculture. So a sad day for Ontario agriculture from that standpoint, and our condolences to all of Jack's family. Okay, let's move on. And on a different note, wow, climate is changing. There's no question. It always has. We've talked about this. But one of the things that historically we've noted, or the meteorologists have noted, warm winters. And oh my gosh, and I know that this winter is weather. Climate is long-term changes. The immediate weather is weather, and there's a difference between climate and weather. But oh my gosh, the weather this winter, it is warmer for sure. And I mean, we've had a cold snap, there's no question, but overall, it has been a warm winter, and you know, long term, if we continue to get these warmer winters, it could well have an impact on how we manage things like winter canola, winter wheat, alfalfa, winter barley. We'll grow more winter barley because it'll survive better if we keep these mild winters happening. And gosh, it sure seems to be the weather this winter, overall, it has been mild across much of Canada. Because even in the West right now, I think they said 10 degrees above normal in Western Canada right now. And so, wow, some opportunities that could jump out of that. And in the West, so Ryan tweeting out that he was out testing his GPS, and Rich tagged in Wheat Pete saying, Ryan, I hope you got some hard red spring wheat in that air cart and you're putting it in the ground. Now, there's a bit of snow where Ryan was, but gosh, it looked like it was going into the ground beautifully. And Ryan sending back, nope, I was just setting up this new GPS system, nothing in the tank. No, what a missed opportunity. Don't do it. Do not do it. Gosh, it just looked like it was going in so nice. And I mean, if you're doing that, just to have some seed in the bin and see what the heck happened. I think those are opportunities that we really have to consider. And I know some people in Western Canada are, but yeah, cool things like that. Hey, just before I miss the rest of the opportunities, the yen closes. So the Yield Enhancement Network registration for Ontario closes February the 2nd. I'm surprised they're still advertising it. I thought it would be full by now. Dave saying, should we sign up? Oh gosh, you learned so much about the wheat crop that I just think for the $300 it costs you, gosh, the knowledge that you can gain is incredible, particularly for younger farmers like Cohen, like Jeremy, that haven't been involved as long. I really think it's a great process. So yes, sign up for the yen. It should be full. Get signed up. It's a great learning experience with winter wheat. And hey, I should have mentioned this with the warm winters. Nick sending me a great link to an episode of Quirks and Quarks where they talked about the Tonga volcano. And 2 years ago, someone asked about the impact on the climate of that Tonga volcano. Man, that was a great session, because what the Tonga volcano did that we don't really think about, because it was underwater, but all of that heat in the ocean and just the perfect depth and the amount of water vapor that put up into the atmosphere and way up above the jet stream even. Water vapor above the jet stream. And that water vapor is absolutely a greenhouse gas. It traps heat in the atmosphere. So that Tonga volcano probably had a bigger impact than we realized. And that's just nature, right? That is absolutely just nature. Okay, one last opportunity. Hey, all of the Ontario Agricultural Conference recorded sessions are now available. And you can still register as a virtual participant. You can still register. It's $180. I'm spending your money, man. $300 on yen, $180 on the virtual ag conference, but there are 59 recorded sessions there, plus a few other things along the way that are just amazing. So get registered. If you're not registered, get registered. They're available till March 31st. And if you are registered and you thought you were done watching, man, there's so much more stuff up there now. And it's all great sessions. On that note, we had Tech Talk Tuesday last night, Making Soils Work. And so it really was all on soils. And I wanted to talk about this even before last night's Tech Talk Tuesday. But we really we all talk about how we're great stewards of the soil, and we try, we really do, but we are invasive. Agriculture is invasive. And as soon as we start agriculture, we have a negative impact on the soil, even though we want to be soil stewards. So making soils work is really the mindset that I think we have to approach this with. And so there's just a bunch of cool stuff that came out in last night's session, and even before that last week on the agronomists. Yvonne Lawley and I did the agronomists on cover crops, and all of this comes together. So just some interesting stuff that I think can help rattle around in your brain. Chuck saying that in his farm, and he farms up in the New Liskeard district, Earlton, he's quite far north, he grows oats, canola, and soybeans. And because he is now using the technology on his tractors, and I mean the technological advances on equipment, we all know how incredible they are, but he said he couldn't believe it, because now he can track, how much engine torque he's using doing his tillage. And I'm not a big tillage guy, you know that, but it's a high-speed disc, and it could be one of any number of high-speed discs. But canola pulls the hardest, and oats pull the easiest, and soybeans are in between. It's really an interesting thought process. But when he is pulling that high-speed disc in oat stubble versus his canola stubble, he can go 2 miles an hour faster. And last night on Tech Talk Tuesdays is kind of like, is faster a good thing? Well, faster does tell you the kind of the tilth of that soil, how the aggregate stability and how easily it kind of works up. And so it may not be good to pull the implement faster, but it is an indication of just how friable that soil is. But he also uses 17% less fuel. And in the chat, someone else said, yep, we've documented it. If we have wheat with red clover, when we do our tillage, 20% less fuel usage versus on soybean stubble. And so again, this, if it's making soil work and trying to get that beautiful soil that has great aggregate stability, man, oats, red clover, wheat, that's a rotation thing. But rotation really does make the soil work. So we go to the agronomists, and Yvonne Lawley and I on there, and one of the comments Yvonne made, she's in Manitoba, was do no harm. And from that perspective, I put up the roots not iron data where we did all the soil health parameters. We looked at all of them, no difference. After 8 years, have that data, no difference in any of those soil health parameters. And Woody, listening in, just says, oh my gosh, Peter, you make me less optimistic about cover crops and about trying to promote cover crops. But Dr. Dave Hooker in the Twitter discussion after saying, you know, sometimes even though you look at the data and you say, man, Dr. Dave's data, no yield improvement to cover crops. Laura Van Erd, yes, she's getting an improvement in a horticultural rotation where they have a massive amount of time for that cover crop to work after the hort crop comes off. But even in Dr. Van Erd's data, nope. If we're in a field crop rotation, corn, soybeans, wheat, it is really tough to see much benefit. No economic yield benefit in that work either. And you go, why would I do it? And Dr. Dave just says, okay, sometimes the science says, as Yvonne would say, do no harm. So don't grow cereal rye ahead of corn because we know that can do harm. Grow cereal rye ahead of soybeans. It does not do harm. But from a qualitative reasoning standpoint, as Dr. Dave says, sometimes the data may say, you know, there might not be a benefit there in terms of yield, but you just look at it and say, okay, carbon cycling makes a difference. If I use a cover crop, carbon cycling is going to be faster. And carbon sequestration aside, I want the carbon to work for me as an agronomist. And 100% right. So you use that reasoning and you still say, yep, we're going to cycle carbon faster, we're going to cycle nutrients faster, we're going to get more water infiltration because we have more roots there. And even though short-term data, and I mean 8 years is not short-term, but nonetheless, you kind of go, yep, it's still the right thing to do. We are going to do it. And I think that's exactly right. Some of the other things that I think are really interesting, Dr. Dave sent me some of the data from the new cover crop study that he and Manish Rizada are doing. And I've talked about this 50-pound nitrogen on the oat cover crop following wheat. Dave sent me that data. Wow. If you grow oats following wheat as a cover crop and don't put any nitrogen on, you actually get a 6 bushel per acre yield penalty to doing that. If you put 50 pounds of nitrogen on that oat crop, now instead of a yield penalty, we actually get a 9 bushel yield gain over the no nitrogen, so 3 bushels better than doing nothing, and it's not statistically better than doing nothing, but it still is better than oats without the nitrogen. And so again, carbon cycling, that nitrogen will become available at some point. We may not get that nitrogen credit to the corn crop, although when we look at that data, it does look like some of that can cycle to the corn crop, but it is about figuring out how to use these cover crops properly or make the most benefit out of them. So oats with manure, that would be awesome. Oats, you got to buy the nitrogen. It's a little bit tougher, but we can do some of it with phosphorus replacement and nitrogen in MAP, and there are some ways, I think, to make that absolutely work. Hey, some of the other things that got discussed, you know, from an erosion standpoint, and this is a big one from Woody's standpoint. He's on a sand soil, wind erosion, and Woody did the math, and if I think I got it right here, he said that $30,000 per acre land, if you lose 1 millimeter of topsoil, that's $200 per acre. And I would say, Woody, it's actually more than that, because it's always the best soil that blows away. There's 4 times the amount of organic matter that in the soil that blows away. There's 11 times more phosphorus, if I recall correctly. It would be worth way more than just the average of that $30,000 an acre. But erosion control matters. And also, you can weed control. We get weed control out of cover crops. We can get wireworm control out of cover crops. We can fix nitrogen. In this latest study that Dave and Manish Rosada are doing, the benefit to red clover and that nitrogen fixation, when they just cut back to a pretty decent nitrogen rate, but maybe not quite full nitrogen, man, they could get, I think it was a 39 bushel yield increase. So lots of things that would drive you to say, even though the data says no yield gain, and the data is getting pretty clear here in Ontario, and I think for many other parts of the world, it takes a long time to see any real yield gain from doing this. But by golly, even without yield increase, there's lots of reasons why you would still put that cover crop in and try to make that soil work even better. And by the way, it's still rotation first, cover crop second. And then all Josh says, okay, Peter, but we rent land. Once we rent land, man, all of this stuff, it's a short-term lease. Gosh, these intrinsic benefits, the carrying capacity, the weed control, the water infiltration, that is pretty tough sledding if the cover crop costs you money. And that is the downside of short-term rental agreements. There's no question about that. But hey, on an upcoming Agronomist here with Real Agriculture on a Monday night, we are going to talk about soil health versus soil function. Because that was the other thing that really came out of Tech Talk Tuesdays last night, and it was Dr. Dave who put it in the chat first. Wow. Maybe more than soil health, we should be talking about what soil function is your soil lacking in, and how can we improve your soil from that soil function standpoint. And that's a totally different discussion, and I'm pretty sure that Lindsay is going to do an episode of The Agronomist on that. So stay tuned. Lots more to come there. Hey, Edwin, your sorghum Sudan grass prior to potatoes, and do I have any data on that? Well, we know you grow sorghum Sudan grass ahead of wheat. You will reduce your wheat yield. That data is clear, coming from Kansas. We also know that cereal rye ahead of corn reduces corn yields. Okay, if we grow cereal rye ahead of soybeans and we don't get into stand issues, mostly we don't see any yield reduction to the cereal rye, or very minimal to the soybean crop. So when you say sorghum Sudan grass ahead of potatoes, I simply don't know. Is there enough allelopathy there, and are potatoes sensitive like wheat is? Can't tell you that. But the easy way, do a trial. Absolutely do a trial. Hey, Martin, you're less tillage. Martin's way north of New Liskeard. I think he said an hour north of New Liskeard. And he's saying, Peter, I hear what you're saying about less tillage and making the soil work for you, but gosh, we get late frosts. We grow canola, we grow oats, and a tilled field, we get less frost injury most of the time because the heat can get out of that soil. Martin, you're 100% right. What I would say, if you grow oats, the growing point stays below ground. So growing oats following a soybean crop where you don't till the soybean residue, the chances of frost injuring that crop, really minimal. Growing a canola crop, following an oat crop, a blanket of straw if you didn't bale it off, and that would be a little bit different scenario. So always there are different things that you have to look at. The caller asking about organic soybeans, and he's growing panoramas in 30-inch rows, loves them because they are bushy, they branch out, but he's worried about soybean cyst nematode. Easy answer, test your soil. If you do not have soybean cyst nematode and panoramas are working for you, stay with them because they're an IP soybean. I think they're a pretty solid IP soybean variety. But once you get SCN, they do not have the genetic resistance for SCN, then you have to look at changing. And if you're in a good rotation, the chances of you ever getting up to having a bad SCN problem really are pretty minimal. So I don't think you change. just because the variety doesn't have soybean nematode resistance, well, you got to have the problem before you need the solution. And you want to avoid getting into a problem, absolutely. But no, don't change until you know you have the problem with it. I am out of time. That's it. That's all on behalf of the team here at Real Agriculture. This is Wheat Pete with the word for Wednesday, January the 31st. Hey, keep the comments and keep listening. Keep going to the Ag Conference sessions and hopefully see you on Tech Talk Tuesdays. Talk to you next week. Bye now.